me. This is another activity from experimental design, studying people scientifically. It is activity number 7, studying people qualitatively and quantitatively. Those are two words that you're going to have to definitely become familiar with. I can tell you right now that there are many places throughout this unit and on the assessment as well that ask you to not only define those words but give examples of data that are either one or the other. Studying people scientifically presents some interesting challenges. One challenge is that people react differently to identical events. Think about the results of your experiments on touch sensitivity. You probably discovered that not everyone could feel 2 points at the same distance. How do you think scientists deal with this type of challenge? Speaking of challenge, here is the challenge for this activity. How are qualitative and quantitative data used when testing a hypothesis about people? Make sure that you write the word challenge again next to the problem that you are identifying as the one that this lesson is trying to help you understand. Again, it doesn't have to be written in these exact words. You could write it in your own words, but you need to have the same general idea. You're going to need that anticipation guide 1.1 from activity 1. If you've lost it, it's on your Blackboard site. So here's the reading. Scientists usually begin with an idea about what they want to investigate. This is also true for scientists who study people. This idea or hypothesis is the basis for their study. As you now know, a hypothesis is an explanation based on observed facts or an idea of how things work. For example, Dr. Goldberger hypothesized that there was a relationship between pellagra and diet. In some cases, scientists predict the possible outcomes of an experiment. That doesn't make sense to me. In some cases, scientists predict the possible outcomes of an experiment. I guess it does. I misread it. A hypothesis can include a prediction of what might happen. In the last activity, your hypothesis included a prediction about the results. To make sure that they don't influence results, scientists studying people often do not predict the possible results of their experiments. After developing a hypothesis, scientists usually plan and conduct experiments. The results of an experiment can provide evidence that supports or contradicts a hypothesis. In some cases, an experiment provides new information. This new information can produce another hypothesis and another experiment. In this way, a hypothesis can be a work in progress that is continually revised. There you see on the left-hand side the doctor and the patient, and again on the left-hand side a scientist examining a rat brain scan. So here's the first stop to think. These answers should be recorded in your science notebook, unless you've been told otherwise by your science teacher. You hear your friend Yoshi tell someone that a hypothesis is the same as a guess. Explain whether you agree with Yoshi. On the left-hand side, you see the doctor and the nurse working on a computer, but here's the reading again. In the case of pellagra, Dr. Goldberger conducted an experiment on prisoners to test his hypothesis. During the experiment, 7 of 11 prisoners, or 64%, developed pellagra after 6 months. Even though all of the prisoners followed the same diet, they did not respond in the same way. Scientists try to account for individual differences by studying a large enough sample size. There's another bolded phrase or word, and that needs to be written in your science notebook, in your glossary, with the definition. Here's stopping to think, number 2. Explain whether Dr. Goldberger provided enough evidence to prove that pellagra is not contagious. Over there on the left-hand side, the word data is plural. It refers to a set of information. The singular form is datum, one piece of information. In the United States today, government agencies, such as the Food and Drug Administration, tightly control and review experimentation on humans. After receiving governmental approval, companies often search for volunteers to participate in clinical trials. Clinical trials test medicines, food, medical procedures, and medical equipment. Data collected during these trials provide evidence for making conclusions about a product or treatment. The type of data collected depends on what is being investigated. For example, imagine a company that is conducting trials of a new hearing aid. The company would like to know how clearly volunteers can hear when using the hearing aid. People will try out the hearing aid and report how clearly they hear sounds and if they hear any buzzing or other undesired noise from the hearing aid. They may also report whether they find the hearing aid comfortable to wear and attractive in appearance. These are all examples of qualitative data. Qualitative data describes properties or characteristics, in other words, qualities that are used to identify things. Qualitative data often result from putting things into categories. So here is stopping to think number 3. You notice a skateboard for sale on an internet website. The price is good, but the website provides no picture or other information. What qualitative data would you like to have before you decide if you will buy it? Continuing on with the reading. What if you were interested in buying the hearing aid? You would probably want to know how well it works when compared with other hearing aids in clinical trials. People with hearing problems might be tested to measure the softest sound they could hear with and without the different hearing aids. The volume of sound, how loud it is measured in decibels. The company might report that in clinical tests, 90% of the people wearing the hearing aid heard sounds as low as 35 decibels, when only 10% could hear these sounds without the hearing aid. In this case, numerical or quantitative data were collected. Quantitative data are values that have been measured or counted. The word quantitative is related to the word quantity, which means number or amount. Consider an everyday example of qualitative and quantitative information. Imagine you are at a large store with a friend when suddenly you turn around and she's not with you anymore. You look around, but you don't see her anywhere nearby. You ask a store employee if he has seen her. You describe your friend as a tall 13-year-old girl with short brown hair, brown eyes, a red jacket, 2 braids, and a dimple when she smiles. You have included important qualitative and quantitative information about your friend. Here's stopping to think 4. Reread the description of your friend in the above paragraph. Create a list of each of her characteristics. Identify each characteristic as either qualitative or quantitative. I'll continue on with the reading now. Both qualitative and quantitative evidence are important in identifying your friend. Qualitative data provide information about important characteristics that are difficult to measure but can be described and categorized. But in some cases, quantitative data help give a clearer description. Think about the description of your friend in the previous paragraph. A height that seems tall to you might seem short to the store employee. But if you tell him that your friend is 5 feet 7 inches tall, you will both have a clear idea of how tall she is. Here is stopping to think number 5. Letter A. What kinds of qualitative data are used in studying people scientifically? Provide at least 2 examples. Remember to answer your question using complete sentences. Letter B. What kinds of quantitative data are used in studying people scientifically? Provide at least 2 examples. You notice it says at least. Here are the analysis questions for this lesson. I'll read them for you. Do them the way that your teacher requested you to. You decide to take a medicine for your upset stomach. You have a choice of 2 medicines. Both medicines are advertised as safe based on clinical trials. Medicine A was tested on 100 people. Medicine B was tested on 10,000 people. Letter A, which medicine would you take? explain, and support your answer with evidence. So remember, answering incomplete sentences, you have to explain why you wanted to take that one, and you have to support it with evidence. Was your decision based on qualitative or quantitative information? Remember, a complete sentence is required. Number 2, you're a nurse at a local hospital. While you're there, you read a patient chart containing the data below. Identify each item of patient data as quantitative or qualitative. The patient chart that they're referring to is kind of on the left-hand side there, where it talks about skin tone, heart rate, weight, height, body temperature. That's the chart that they're asking you to talk about. Number 3, imagine conducting a clinical trial of a headache medicine. Based on your research, you hypothesize that the medicine will successfully treat headaches in people. Before the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, will approve your study, you must explain the type of data you will collect to test your hypothesis. Here's letter A. List at least 3 kinds of qualitative data you will collect. And here's a hint. Think about what information you would collect from the volunteers and what information you would collect about the medicine in order to determine the safety and effectiveness of the medicine. Letter B, list at least 3 kinds of quantitative data you will collect. And here's a hint again. Think about what information you would collect from the volunteers and what information you would collect about the medicine in order to determine the safety and effectiveness of the medicine. Number 4 is asking you to refer back to that student sheet or that anticipation guide that you used for activity 1. Fill in the after column for statements 13 through 16 on that worksheet, and then talk about if your thinking had changed, and try and explain yourself as completely as you can. Number 5, think about the activities you have done so far in this unit. What are the common elements of a well-designed experiment? You notice it says elements, so that means more than one, and try to include as many as you can, things that really make a well-designed experiment well-designed. So there's a reflection piece. If your teacher has asked you to do that, make sure that you do. Otherwise, I think that we're all done for this activity. Have a good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever. Bye.